Hello everybody, welcome to Savaging Studios. I'm your host, Ink, and today's topic of discussion is going to be coping skills. But before we jump into that, I'm going to apologize in advance. I'm always apologizing for something. I'm a little under the weather, so my voice is a little extra sniffly today. Sorry about that. And also, I'm obviously not a healthcare professional. Duh. This is just my perspective on some mental health stuff. So, coping skills. As a kid who spent half of my childhood in mental hospitals, the words coping skills bring back a lot of repetitive style suggestions. Coping skills are obviously the things that we do to try to cope with situations being super crappy or our feelings being super crappy, things that we do to try and get through things that are tough, right? Right. So, I remember in the mental hospital that I had been sent to, the coping skills that they had recommended for me were probably specific to my problems, which were self-harm issues. So, for self-harm kids, like myself, they recommended things like squeezing Play-Doh, or cutting through Play-Doh with butter knives, or snapping rubber bands on your wrists to simulate the feeling of self-harm or something, which I'm sure isn't exactly how they had said it, but I think that was the assumption that was carried over with the type of suggestions that they were giving. I had a personal therapist, as opposed to the hospital that I went to, who had talked a lot about coping skills and things to do. A really popular one that actually did kind of work for me a little bit was the count 5. 5 things that you can see, smell, hear, feel. I've heard some people do it in another way where it's, 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can hear, 3 things that you can smell, 2 things that you can touch, yada yada. And sometimes if you can feel that you're about to have a panic attack coming on, that's actually not a bad thing to do. However, I think that a lot of the coping skills that were recommended to me, primarily by the mental hospital that I was in, all seemed really silly. And this is kind of an interesting topic for me on this channel to be bringing up, but it came up because I had been talking to a girl at my job, and she had asked me a question about something. I had been writing down a list or whatever, and I was like, I just do it to calm myself down sometimes. And she's like, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, sometimes when I get really stressed out and overwhelmed, and I can't focus on anything, I'll just, make a list of all of the colors that I can think of, or all of the books that I can think of, or all of the characters in a certain book that I can think of. And it just helps me focusing on something for enough time for my brain to kind of calm down and straighten itself out. And then when I'm done making a list, then I feel better and more clear-headed. And she's like, wow, that's a really, really good idea, actually. I've never had someone tell me about a coping skill like that could sound like it would actually work. And at that point, I kind of realized, well, if there are any teenagers or even young adults who watch my channel who struggle with anxiety or depression or just feeling really overwhelmed, then it's, I feel like I should be sharing the information of, those of you who are familiar with my channel and have watched all of the videos that I've put up know, I had a rough upbringing, and I still made it through. So if I can tell people who are in similar situations to the one that I grew up in and how I got through it, even if it only helps one person, it is worth going through it all. So that is what we are doing today. So as a kid with a lot of issues and not a whole lot of support, the list thing I had started a long, long time ago. And I think that really does help. If your brain is feeling really staticky and overwhelmed and you can't focus on anything, just write out a few lists and see what it does for you. You know, if you can focus your brain on one specific topic, write it all down, get it organized, that might carry over and help you work through some of the other stuff that's going on in your head. Something recently that I found out is a huge stress relief for me, which is really surprising because it's something I didn't used to enjoy doing, but now is counting change and rolling it into change rolls. Just the action of separating all the coins into their own little sections and then counting them out to such an amount and then being able to roll them together and feel like this giant messy pile of mixed coins is now a whole bunch of neat little rolls, and you know exactly how much is in each roll. It's just really satisfying and gives me an opportunity to straighten my head out. So I would recommend that also if you just need some time to like get out of your head and try to get your brain to focus. Something else that I did when I was younger, not so much now, unfortunately, because as an adult, I do not have the kind of time to dedicate to this as I did when I was young and school was my only real thing that I specifically had to do. And even that I didn't really do. This is a coping skill that I used during that time too, which I don't recommend. I recommend that, you know, if you can focus on school and get through it and do it right, I imagine it would be very rewarding. I would not know I dropped out. Get into a really good book that you can completely fan over. For me, when I was young, it was Harry Potter. I had every single Harry Potter book, and most of the pages were highlighted. I took notes. I was obsessed. I wrote fan fiction, and I drew fan art, and I got so into these books that it just completely took me out of my life and all of the terrible things that I was going through when I really got into it. So I know that reading isn't for everybody. Some people can't see what they're reading in their heads, and it's difficult to get into. So I understand if that's the case and it doesn't work for you. But even if, you know, reading is difficult for you to get really into, even a comic book or, you know, a TV series or a movie, something that you can get really, really into that can take your mind off, I feel that was really, really healthy for me, and that if I had not had this book series to totally obsess over, I would have completely lost it, you know? These characters weren't real people, but they were the only connections that I felt that I had in my life throughout my teenage years, and it ended up being something that was really, really important to me. Like I said, as an adult, I don't have time to dedicate to going to midnight book releases and getting into the communities surrounding other people who are totally obsessed with stuff, or even just sitting down and reading a book all the way through in one go. I just don't have time to do things like that anymore. But I would if I could, because it was an awesome, awesome feeling to be into something really, really cool and feeling connected to the characters, and also feeling connected to the other people who felt the same way about that book. So if you are able to do that with a book or a TV series or a comic, I would definitely recommend that to people who are feeling lonely and separated and like there's nothing to live for. Find something that excites you that you can share with other people, you know? I think that most people would assume that drawing would be a coping skill for me, but I actually have a really hard time creating art when I'm in a bad place. It's something I have to sort of force myself to do, not something that I do to feel better. So, but I do know that a lot of people use that as a coping skill that works for them. So there's also that. And finding people who understand what you're going through, preferably within your own age range, only because older people can target younger people by saying, I know what you're going through, I've been there, and they can use that in a way that is not to your best benefit. So if you can find people within your age range who are going through the same things as you, that can really help both of you work out what you're going through and why and how to feel better about it. So, you guys know the drill. Like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. Please feel free to check out my Threadless shop. I've got some really cool new designs up there, and it does super help out the channel. I hope you guys found this helpful in any way. And of course, if any of you ever need or want to talk, my email is in my About Me description, as is my DeviantArt account. So, like, comment, subscribe. Any questions, comments, suggestions, you know where to put them. Check out my Threadless shop, and I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.